I'm going to do something a little different today. I actually have a study, and it's not pre-written. And what we're going to do is we're going to select a chapter out of Scripture today, and we're just going to go over it together. And I think that'll be beneficial, and I think it's going to be something unique, and I want to get your feedback and see how you like it. And there's one chapter in particular I want to go over, and I'm not the kind of guy that likes to put a whole lot of words, my words up, and then one or two scriptures. And I'd rather go through a lot of scripture and just share a little bit as we go. So I want to go over Psalm chapter 119. And so today's study is called Treasures in Psalm 119. Psalm 119 is familiar, I'm sure, to a lot of you. And it goes into the blessing of the word of Yahweh. It goes into how important it is. Especially, I just love the heart of the person, whoever it is, that wrote Psalm 119. It's not certain who it actually is. Some have suggested it could be David, and that may very well be true, but it's not named. And but it is a lengthy one, isn't it? Psalm 119 is the longest chapter in all of Scripture, 172 verses. And if I get going too long, I'll just kind of zoom on through the end there. But we will begin, of course, by looking at verse 1. Hallelujah. In Psalm 119, verse 1, you'll notice it starts off with the Aleph, and that is a Hebrew alphabet character. It's the very first one. And if anyone ever wonders why the alphabet is in the order that it is, there is a general agreement, at least in certain places, not completely, but in some places, between the Hebrew alphabet and the English alphabet. It starts with Aleph, which gives us, in most cases, an A sound, not always, but you notice it has Aleph. And so we have in the Greek alpha, beta, and I think it's quite possible that alpha, beta came from the Hebrew Aleph, bet. And so looking at the first verse, this is called an acrostic. And acrostic, this means that all the verses in Psalm 119 that are in the first 8 verses are going to be Hebrew words that start with the letter Aleph. And so if we were able to read this in Hebrew together, you would notice that all the lines here, each verse begins with the Hebrew letter Aleph, and then it'll go 8 verses and then go to Bet, and then on through the whole Hebrew alphabet, or alphabet, I like to say. All right. Okay, so very first verse reads as follows. Blessed are the undefiled in the way, who walk in the law of Yahweh. And so if we're looking to be undefiled in all of our ways, that means that we are holy, we are pure, we are without spot and blameless before the throne of Elohim, then we must walk in the law of Yahweh. And don't let anyone tell you differently. Those who walk in the law of Yahweh are undefiled. Now, how many of us have actually walked in the law of Yahweh? Probably all. I think all of us have failed to walk in the law of Yahweh at some point in our life. And so what we have understanding of now is that we do have Yahshua, who is our cleansing, who did walk in the law of Yahweh, who was undefiled, and through him we are able to receive cleansing for the times that we failed to walk in the law of Yahweh. All right, verse 2. Blessed are those who keep his testimonies, who seek him with a whole heart. How many of us want to be blessed? Well, here are two ways that we can be blessed. The first one is verse 1, who walk in the law of Yahweh, the undefiled. And then verse 2, those who keep his testimonies and who seek him with a whole heart. I'm reminded back in the book of Deuteronomy chapter 6 where it says that we are to love Yahweh with all of our heart, all of our soul, and all of our strength. The problem is, all of our heart, we have a very deceitful heart. Jeremiah 17 verse 5 says that the heart is deceitful. Who can know it? I think it's verse 5. But it's in Jeremiah 17. And how many of us thought we were walking rightly, but then we realized there was something in our heart at some point in our life that wasn't right? And so it takes time, doesn't it, for us to get all this yuck out of our heart. But the more we make the word of Yahweh our desire, our meditation, and something that we are seeking after, the more he's going to reveal the imperfections in our heart, and the more we're going to walk uprightly and walk in an undefiled way. All right, back to Psalm 119. They also do no iniquity. They walk in his ways. Who are they? The ones who seek him with a whole heart, who keep his testimonies, who walk in the law of Yahweh. So going back, they do no iniquity. Why? Because they're learning about what's right and what's wrong in the law of Yahweh. You have commanded us to keep your precepts diligently. Today, if you try to keep Yahweh's precepts diligently, someone might call you a legalist. They might think that you're focusing too much on obedience. You're trying to be saved by your own righteousness. No, there's nothing wrong with being diligent in keeping every commandment of Yahweh. In the scriptures in Matthew 23:23, Yahshua upbraided the scribes and Pharisees for attending to the finer points while ignoring the major things like justice, mercy, and faith. But then he said, these you ought to have done and not leave the others undone. And so there's nothing wrong with paying tithe of mint and cumin and so on, but we don't leave the others undone either. And so there's nothing legalistic about being diligent to keep the commandments of Yahweh. In fact, it's better to be a legalist than an illegalist, isn't it? We rather be legal, although we don't want to be legalist either, in the sense that we believe that through our obedience to Yahweh's law, somehow we're going to get salvation. No, we do it because we love him, because we want to seek him with our whole heart. Now, a very interesting verse here in verse 5. He said, oh, that my ways were directed to keep your statutes. He desires that his own ways would be to keep his statutes. But what does he find? He says, then I would not be ashamed when I look into all your commandments. And so we see here a longing, a hungering, and a thirsting that his ways would be directed to keep his statutes. That way, when he read the words of Yahweh, he would not be ashamed. And I find this very interesting because there are a number of places in the psalm here where he talks about how he keeps Yahweh's commands, he applies his statutes, and so on. And yet, he recognizes he's not perfect, and that his ways are not directed to keep his statutes. But in fact, that when he looks into the commandments, that he's ashamed. And so that's where our Savior comes in, doesn't it? He brings us salvation, so that when we look into his commandments, we don't need to be ashamed. We need to be we be praising Yahweh for the salvation that we have received through the Savior Yahshua, aren't we? Hallelujah. I will praise you with uprightness of heart when I learn your righteous judgments. So when he looks into the law of Yahweh, he praises Yahweh with an upright heart, because he sees how righteous they are and how blessed they are. I will keep your statutes. Oh, do not forsake me utterly. I think it's just awesome how that you can almost feel in your bones and in your heart the way that whoever this man is, if it's David or Asaph or some have suggested Ezra, whoever this man is, he is crying out, he is hungering, he is thirsting for the word of Yahweh, and for Yahweh to be with him. He doesn't want to be forsaken, and he wants to praise Yahweh with uprightness of heart. He wants to not be ashamed when he looks into the commandments. And he wishes his ways were directed to keep his statutes. And he recognizes that this is something that he needs in his life. And so he's a humble man. And then we reach the next letter of the Aleph Bet. Bet. And he asks the question, how can a young man cleanse his way? By taking heed according to your word. A lot of times, when we're in our youth, that's when we tend to do more sin than we ought to. And he recognizes that. I think David said in one place, remember not the sin of my youth. And if a young man wants to cleanse his way, he needs to take heed according to the word of Yahweh. And that means he needs to walk in repentance. And although at this time the psalmist wrote this, there was no, about the Messiah was kind of a mystery. But Yahweh recognized that when a person turned to righteousness and turned away from unrighteousness, then he would apply the blood of Messiah to that person, even though they didn't know about the Messiah yet. Because it says in one place that Yahshua is the lamb slain from the foundation of the world. And so now we understand that repentance and baptism are necessary for us to do. Baptism and faith in the Messiah. But at that time, it was repentance and trust in Yahweh's mercy, however he was going to bring it about, that Yahweh would forgive him. And so, how can a young man cleanse his way? Take heed according to the word of Yahweh. And the same is true today. When we begin to take heed according to the word of Yahweh, we are going to be blessed and we're going to be cleansed. A good verse there, a brother brought up in the chat room, John 15:3. Yahshua said, you are clean through the word which I have spoken to you. And so the word of Yahweh has a cleansing power. We hear the word of Yahweh, we begin to walk in righteousness. Next verse, Psalm 119, with my whole heart I have sought you. Oh, let me not wander from your commandments. And so now he's sought Yahweh, and he does not want to wander away again and fall into the pits and snares the enemy has for him. He wants to walk in Yahweh's commandments. And he asked Yahweh, please don't let me wander from your commandments. And that's something that we can ask Yahweh also, that we would not wander from the commands. And so this is not a man who is a legalist. This is a man who is seeking Yahweh with his whole heart. And he wants his heart to be cleansed. He wants to please the Father, because he loves Yahweh and his ways. He says, your word I have hidden in my heart that I might not sin against you. So many times we have a tendency to forget. But when we have his word written on our hearts, whenever some kind of temptation comes against us, then that word will be there as a reminder for us to not walk in that temptation. And so, how do we hide the word of Yahweh in our heart? We ask Yahweh to write it in our hearts by his Spirit, and we can also do so by reading the word of Yahweh often, daily. And as it says in Psalm chapter 1, that day and night we seek the law of Yahweh, both day and night. In fact, I'd like to read that scripture to you. Psalm 1, it says, blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the unrighteous, nor stands in the path of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful, but his delight is in the law of Yahweh, and in his law he meditates day and night. He shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water that brings forth fruit in its season, whose leaf also shall not wither, and whatever he does shall prosper. Awesome promises given to those who meditate on the law of Yahweh. As we read earlier in Psalm 119, verse 1, blessed are the undefiled in the way. First we hear it, and then we do it, right? And we tend to walk in the things that we hear, whether good, bad, or ugly, or glorious. We tend to walk in the things that we hear. And so the more we hear the word of Yahweh, the more we're going to walk in the word of Yahweh. Blessed are you, O Yahweh. Teach me your statutes. He's asking Yahweh for divine intervention. He's wanting Yahweh by his Spirit to teach him his ways. And that's how we can get this word hidden in our heart, is Yahweh by his Spirit writing it in our hearts through his instruction toward us, through Yahshua the Messiah living in us. We get taught his statutes. We get to be taught his ways. And that's a blessing. But the only thing we need in order to receive that is that desire for wisdom. And whoever asks Yahweh for wisdom will receive it if he asks with faith. We have to ask with faith. And as James said in one place, and I can look up the scripture in James chapter, I think it's chapter 1. No, chapter 1, isn't it? Verse 5, if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of Elohim, who gives all to all liberally and without reproach, and it will be given to him. And so here's a psalmist asking for that wisdom. Teach me your statutes, his laws, his commandments, the right way to live. And then verse 6 in James 1 says, let him ask in faith with no doubting. For he who doubts is like a wave of the sea driven and tossed by the wind. For let not that man suppose he'll receive anything from Yahweh. He's a double-minded man, unstable in all his ways. It's vain to ask, isn't it? If you don't believe you're going to receive it. That's not true faith. That's not faith at all. That's asking and then not thinking you're going to receive it. That's double-mindedness. So blessed are you, O Yahweh. Teach me your statutes. With my lips I have declared all the judgments of your mouth. You know, as we grow in our understanding, as Yahweh teaches us his ways, he's going to give us the wisdom to declare all of his ways to others and guide others to righteousness also. And that's something that to where others also can learn about the way of Yahweh and can walk in the law of Yahweh as well, those who seek it. I have rejoiced in the way of your testimonies, as much as in all riches. So he puts the rejoicing of Yahweh's laws, his commandments, his testimonies, on equal plane here, and in other places we'll see even greater than in all riches. See, the spiritual riches are what count, isn't it? A person could have all the material possessions and lack things, and lack truth, lack life, lack a lot of things. And in Yahweh's eyes, could actually be very poor. So we may not be rich in physical possessions, but we can be very wealthy in the way of Yahweh's testimonies. Hallelujah. In fact, riches have a way of taking us away from the true riches. The physical riches have a way of taking us away, and Yahshua taught us that how hard it is for those who have riches to enter the kingdom of Yahweh. Verse 15, I will meditate on your precepts and contemplate your ways. It's one thing to be able to read the word of Yahweh, and it's another thing to meditate on it and think about it. Meditate on it and contemplate his ways. A lot of people, when they read the scriptures, they read it, but it doesn't really reach the heart, because it's like reading another storybook or something. It doesn't really reach the heart because their heart does not yearn for righteousness. Their heart does not yearn for his law, for his truth to be placed in their hearts, that they might walk more uprightly and to be more like the Messiah in their walk. And so they don't really love Yahweh with all their heart. They're just reading it as a ritual or something. But when we read it, we need to stop and meditate on his precepts. Contemplate what we're reading. Not just, we skip something, we don't understand it, just, move on. If there's something we don't understand, we want to stop and say, what is this? That way, when we actually read this word, we understand it. There's a parable about the seed and the sower, and Yahshua gave us. And he said that there are some, when they hear the word of Yahweh, they don't understand it. And because of that, and that's in Matthew 13:19, it says, when anyone hears the word of the kingdom and does not understand it, then the wicked one comes and snatches away what was sown in his heart. And so it doesn't do us any good, does it, unless we understand it. And so we need to seek that understanding and contemplate his ways and ask Yahweh, teach me your statutes. What does this mean? How can I apply this in my life? But if we don't hunger and thirst for righteousness, we're just going to read it and then go on and not do anything about it and not really care to apply it to our life. It says, I will delight myself in your statutes. I will not forget your word. And that's what we need to do also. When we read the word, we need to delight in it and not forget it. Someone can say that they forgot. It's like, you ever had this? If any of you had children, they'll say, oh, well, yeah, I was going to do that, Dad. I forgot. And if that becomes a habit, then you start realizing, it doesn't sound like they really delight to do what I asked them to do, because they don't hold it to be valuable enough to where they're actually doing it and remembering to do it. And we can claim to forget some of Yahweh's word, but if we don't delight in it, that's why we're forgetting it. And that shows a root problem in our heart that we need to get rid of. It's if we don't care to remember something, then we're going to forget it if we don't care enough about it. I mean, how many? Let's say you had a child and you said not to do something, but then you gave a little consequence. You said, well, if you don't do what I say, then there'll be no ice cream tonight for dessert. Do you think they'll remember? They're probably more likely to remember that, right? But if you just told them to do something, you didn't give them a little reward at the end, then they just have more of a tendency to forget. Well, we have to recognize that when we do Yahweh's commandments, when we walk like Yahshua walked, there's a reward for that. And so there's a blessing in it. There's a real important treasure that we're going to store up for us in the age to come. And so we're not going to forget because we want the treasure. In Psalm 19, I think it says that in the keeping of them there is great reward. And there is, both in this life and in the life to come. Now we're in Gimel, Aleph Bet Gimel. Deal bountifully with your servant, that I may live and keep your word. In other words, we want Yahweh's blessing, and it makes it easier for us to serve him when we're not constantly being dealt with hardship, isn't it? And so sometimes though, if we have too much goodness, too much ease in our life, we have a tendency to forget also. And one place in Proverbs it says, "Give me neither poverty nor riches." If I'm rich, I'll forget Yahweh, but if I'm poor, I might steal and take his name in vain. So, we're wanting the bountifulness of our Elohim. And we don't want riches to cause us to forget his word, do we? Open my eyes that I may see wondrous things from your law. How many of us, once we realize the blessing of Yahweh's commandments and his ways, we had our eyes opened when we started to see wondrous things from his law. I see wondrous things already from the book of Psalm 119, don't you? Wondrous things from this psalm even. Things that get right into our heart and get right into the inner core. And we're going to see more of these things as we go on. But we have to ask Yahweh to open our eyes, because a lot of times we're blinded. We don't see. And we may have eyes, but we see not. We may have ears, but we hear not. We're like dumb idols. But Yahshua said many times, he who has ears to hear, let him hear. And so we we want to be among those who have our eyes open to the truth. So we want to walk in the truth. And so we ask Yahweh, are there any blind spots I have in my life? Reveal it to me. Verse 19, I am a stranger in the earth. Do not hide your commandments from me. And so we have this mindset that we are actually pilgrims here. This is not our permanent home. And to the world, we are a bunch of strangers. This is a world that we live in today. It's pretty much governed by unrighteousness in many cases. And so we consider ourselves strangers to this world. This world is not serving Yahweh. And so we are peculiar people. We're unusual. We are not like those of the world. We're different. He says, do not hide your commandments from me. I think Yahweh actually does that. If you don't want to know the truth, then he's just going to keep it from you. so you won't know it. If you don't desire and love truth, He'll send you delusions so you believe some lie somewhere. And it actually says that in one place, 2 Thessalonians. And it says that those who do not love the truth are going to believe a lie. Yahweh Himself will send them a strong delusion. 2 Thessalonians 2, verse 11. And so we have to love the truth that we might be saved. And we have to despise the things that are lies. Verse 20, my soul breaks with longing for your judgments at all times. What is it about Yahweh's judgments? What is it about His commandments? You know, I wish that Yahweh's judgment was on the earth today. And sometimes we only think of justice in the sense of the judicial branch of government. But Hebraically, there is no difference between the judicial and the spiritual, the priest, the governing, the whole everything. Yahweh's commands in our life. And so when we think of He's the Elohim of justice, the only reason He has to bring justice is because those who are on the earth are not walking in His law. And so justice has to be served. And we long for His justice, for His judgments to be established on the earth, which are the ways of love, the ways of truth, the ways of life, the ways of peace, the ways of goodness. That's what we long for. That's what we're looking for. Those judgments of Yahweh. So we cry out, let your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Hallelujah. You rebuke the proud, the cursed, who stray from your commandments. The ones who stray from the commandments of Yahweh have the attribute of pride. And they are cursed. You see, if we think we already know the right way to do things, and we don't need Yahweh's commandments in our life, in His direction, His instruction for the right way to live, we're walking in pride. We're just going to live our own way, do our own life, do our own thing, however we want to do it, and not let anyone, not even Yahweh, tell us the way we need to live. That's pride. Who are we, our little puny little minds, to think that we know better than the Creator of the universe? We need to humble ourselves in the sight of Yahweh, and He will instruct us. He will lead us. And those who walk in that pride are cursed. And if you look at the way governments are operating today, it's all pride, thinking that man can rule himself with his own ideas of what right and wrong are, rather than the right ways that Yahweh has given us in His Word. Remove from me reproach and contempt, for I have kept your testimonies. Now, didn't we read earlier that He said He wishes that his ways were directed to keep His statutes, and yet here He's saying, I've kept your testimonies. Is that a contradiction? See, not in the Hebraic mind. It's not. The word keep means to guard, to value. Of course, if we value, we will obey them. Sometimes out of weakness we may fail. We have a certain way in our flesh that doesn't want to be directed by Yahweh's statutes. And so we are weak in that area sometimes. But here He's saying He's kept His testimonies. I think this is a man who has trusted in the mercy of Yahweh to cleanse him and to forgive him for those times he is not. And so he has, in his mind, kept the testimonies of Yahweh. And we can say that too, that we have kept Yahweh's testimonies, not because we've walked in perfect obedience since the day we were born, but because of the cleansing of Yahweh that we receive through Yahshua, our Master. And in the eyes of Yahweh, He's the one that holds the record books. We have kept His testimonies. But we have to have this heart that yearns for His truth and for the way of love. Princes also sit and speak against me, but your servant meditates on your statutes. That's what happens. When you start making Yahweh's word a priority in your life, even the chief men around you, princes in this case, he's speaking of king's sons, are speaking against him because he meditates on the statutes of Yahweh. They'll probably call you names and think that you're putting too much emphasis on the commands and the word of Yahweh, and might call you names like legalist. and if you really start keeping the commands of Yahweh, then a lot of people might say, well, you're Jewish, in a disparaging way. And so people will speak against you when you start walking in the ways of Yahweh. And that goes with the territory. That's something we would come to expect, because when people see us walking in the ways of Yahweh, see, the ways of Yahweh are an abomination to the wicked, and the ways of the wicked are an abomination to Yahweh. They're two things that are contrary to one another, and they're at war with each other. And so when people see you walking and meditating on and trying to live according to the statutes of Yahweh, they're going to speak against you. That's the way it is. Get used to it. But the one who holds the record books, the one whose opinion really matters, he won't speak against you. He'll bless you. And that takes faith for us to walk that out and to believe that. Your testimonies also are my delight and my counselors. See, sometimes we don't need counsel. We just need to read the Word of Yahweh. We don't need to go and talk to somebody about our problems. What we really need is to go to the Word of Yahweh and let His Word counsel us. And that's the way this psalmist took it. He says, well, his testimony is because he delights in them whenever he has a problem in his life. The testimonies of Yahweh are his counselors. Now, sometimes Yahweh can use men who are well acquainted with the word of Yahweh to counsel you. That's not a bad thing. But it is ultimately Yahweh's counsel we're looking for, isn't it? Whether He gives us get that through the word of Yahweh and the scriptures, and or we can get it through those who know the scriptures and can direct us and teach us the ways of Yahweh. Now we're into the next Hebrew letter, DALETH, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, DALETH. It says, my soul clings to the dust. Revive me according to your word. We might as well get used to the idea of being afflicted if we're going to start walking in Yahweh's ways. And sometimes it's a life where we go up and down and up and down and up and down. But if we begin to cleave to Yahweh and seek His revival in ourselves, see, our soul also has a tendency to cling to the flesh as well. And that's Adam, the dust. And we need revival, right? Our soul needs revival. And it has to be, all revival has to be according to His word. It's one thing to, you ever heard of people going to revival meetings? And people pleading for revival, send the revival. The revival has to be according to His word, doesn't it? According to His law. And not just any old revival. I have declared my ways, and you answered me. Teach me your statutes. So if our ways are not according to the ways of Yahweh, He's going to teach us. We have to confess our sins to Him and recognize that His ways are higher than our ways, and get His cleansing, get His forgiveness. As we do that, Yahweh, we ask Him, teach us your statutes. That's what we ask Him. Again, seeking that spiritual, that Ruach HaKodesh, that Holy Spirit, that will remind us of the words of Yahshua and the words of Yahweh and lead us into all truth. Make me understand the way of your precepts. Again, we have to seek understanding and not just read, but we have to understand what we read. So shall I meditate on your wondrous works. There are works that Yahweh does outside the Scriptures. Works that He's done in our life. Works that He does in creation. Works He does in people's lives around us. That should also be our meditation, with the things that Yahweh is doing in our lives and the lives of those who are around us. And we can meditate on the things that are going on in the world today. And kind of an interesting thing happening down in Florida is there's this pastor who, it seemed to me, scared the whole world because he was going to burn some Korans. Well, how do we ingest that and try to process that as believers? I see a fellow down there who's doing something he doesn't need to do to provoke men to anger. But he's making a point. But the amazing thing is that even everyone from the President of the United States to the General of the Army of over there in Afghanistan are all telling him, oh, don't do it, don't do it. It's going to be a recruiting thing for Al-Qaeda. So Al-Qaeda is terrorizing everybody because they might get more recruitments, and they're afraid of Al-Qaeda getting more recruitments. And so terrorism apparently has been effective in terrorizing people, because you burn a few Korans and look what happens. So people are afraid. That's why people don't want to go to Israel on missionary work and to go to the West Bank. They're afraid of Muslims. But I look at what the disciples were doing in the first century. I mean, they were all kinds of opposition, and they walked in boldness. And we don't have to be afraid either. We have Yahweh, the King of the universe, who is with us. So I'll meditate on Yahweh's wondrous works, the things that are going on today, the way He is allowing things to happen in the world, and what He's doing about them. We don't need to walk in fear, do we? My soul melts from heaviness. Strengthen me according to your word. You ever felt that way before? Your soul just dropped, just melted. And Yahweh is able to strengthen us according to His word. One time Yahshua was very weak, and Yahweh sent down an angel to strengthen him. And Yahweh can do the same for us. Remove from me the way of lying, and grant me your law graciously. See, this man does not want lies. He wants truth, and the word of Yahweh is truth. And it's a gracious thing for Yahweh to even grant you the understanding that you should be keeping His law. And He doesn't. If we don't want any way of lying, then we're not going to receive this lie. We're not going to walk in this lie. We're going to look for truth. And the more we look for truth, the more we're going to find that, first of all, the law of Yahweh has not been made void. It stands, and it is something there to direct us and to guide us in our life. It's a good thing. It's the traditions of men that have, once again, as it did in the first century, caused the word of Yahweh to be of no effect. And Yahshua spoke against the scribes and Pharisees for that very thing. So we need to walk in truth and desire to be removed far from the way of lies. We want no part of lies. The enemy is a liar and the father of it. He has his words, his doctrines, his theology as well. And we want to be removed far from that. We want Yahweh's law to be granted to us. See, not everybody gets that blessing of having Yahweh's law granted to them. So, verse 30, I have chosen the way of truth. Your judgments I have laid before me. We have to choose it. It's one thing to hear it. It's another thing to choose it. And to set Yahweh's word before us as something that we want to walk in. We have to choose it. It's our choice. I cling to your testimonies, O Yahweh. Do not put me to shame. It's not a bad thing to not want to be shamed, not want to be reproached. Doesn't mean you're prideful. We don't have to think that it's a humble thing to never desire or to not care if we're shamed. I mean, we shouldn't care to the extent that we care more about our pride than we do Yahweh. But we don't want to be put to shame, not a very pleasant thing. And so he's saying, hey, I'm clinging to your testimonies. Don't put me to shame. Maybe he had some skeletons in his closet. Some things that he did in the past. He didn't want to be exposed. He's saying, well, look, I'm trying to cling to your testimonies. Don't put me to shame. I will run the course. I'll continue on, Yahweh, of your commandments. Why? Because you will enlarge my heart. You ever heard of a guy, he says he has a real big heart. As someone whose heart is good, is full of the goodness of Yahweh, and Yahweh is a big Elohim, and when he dwells in our hearts, our heart gets enlarged, doesn't it? So we will run the course of his commandments. If Yahweh enlarges our heart, he has to cleanse it. He has to get all the yuck out of it. We just need to let him mold our hearts. Hey, that's one of the Hebrew letters in the alphabet. Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet. Hey, that's also one of the letters in Yahweh's name. It says, teach me, O Yahweh, the way of your statutes, and I shall keep it to the end. So he's determined. But he wants Yahweh's teaching, and he will keep it to the end. That needs to be our attitude also. Give me understanding, and I shall keep your law. Indeed, I shall observe it with my whole heart. Yahweh's not looking for a half-hearted observance. He wants a wholehearted observance of his word. Sometimes we fail to understand things, and so we don't keep it fully with our whole heart. Make me walk in the path of your commandments, for I delight in it. That's kind of interesting. He's asking Yahweh to make him walk in the path of his commandments. Give him the strength, the ability to walk in the path of Yahweh's commandments because he delights in it. And that's what we need to have too. If we delight in the ways of Yahweh, he's going to give us the strength to overcome. We have to delight in it. We can't look at it and say, oh, I don't want to do that. We've got to look at it and say, wow, that's awesome. Let's do it. And then he will give you the strength to walk in the things that you hear, the things that you're reading. Incline my heart to your testimonies and not to covetousness. Again, asking Yahweh to mold his heart, incline them to the testimonies. There are two opposites here. The desires of things of Yahweh and the desires for the things of this world. Covetousness is a desire for the things of this world. And so we need to get that covetousness, this world mindset out of us and walk in the things of Yahweh and desire the things of Yahweh to be in our heart, in our walk. Turn away my eyes from looking at worthless things and revive me in your way. So many times the things that cause us temptation come through the eyes, especially in various lusts, things for riches, lust of the flesh, things like that, covetousness. Turn away his eyes, he says, from looking at worthless things. See, everything that's in this world is all temporary. It's all temporary. Look around you. It's all temporary. And the only thing that's eternal is the word of Yahweh, his mercy, Yahweh himself, Yahshua, the things of the Spirit. Those are the things that are eternal. The things that are temporary are all worthless because they don't mean anything except to the extent that the things of this world, that we use them for eternal purposes, for good purposes. And now there are lots of worthless things out there. Different inventions of men, things that man creates that have no value spiritually. And we need to turn our eyes away from those things. And let our eyes be turned to the words of Yahweh and get that revival in the ways of Yahweh. There's the worthless things and there's Yahweh's ways. We need to get our eyes focused on the spiritual things. One way that our eyes have a tendency to get traveling off the wrong path is when we start watching what the world's doing, looking around us, maybe through an internet website or through a television program. Scripture says, hell and destruction are never full, so the eyes of man are never satisfied. And that's true. The eyes never say, well, I'm done looking now, and just close, unless we're going to sleep. Proverbs 27, verse 20. The eyes of man are never satisfied. There's always something new to look at. Always something interesting to look at. So the eyes of man never say, well, that's enough. And that's what happens with lust. That's what happens with money and greed and different things. There's always something better out there somewhere. And go down that path, and that's where it'll take you. To become worthless like the things you're looking at. So, we want to be worth something in the eyes of Yahweh. We don't want the vain things. We want the things that last forever. Establish your word to your servant, who is devoted to fearing you. It's a good thing to fear Yahweh. Someone say, well, we're not supposed to be afraid of him. Perfect love casts out fear and all this stuff. Well, we have to have a foundation underneath us that says, if I turn away from Yahweh, not only would that be a sad thing because I love him so much and it would be just unthinkable because in light of all he's done for me, but also recognition that if we do turn away, there will be judgment. And so it's an important thing to fear Yahweh. So establish your word to your servant. We want his word to be established. We want it to stand in our hearts. Turn away my reproach, which I dread, for your judgments are good. Once again, he doesn't want to be shamed. He recognizes the goodness of Yahweh. He doesn't want to be reproached. We don't want to be reproached, but we need to be willing to be reproached if we're being reproached for righteousness' sake. Now, if we're being reproached because of our own failures, then that's our own doing. But even in that, we can ask Yahweh to turn away our reproach. Behold, I long for your precepts. revive me in your righteousness. Once again, he's longing for Yahweh. Revive me in your righteousness. See, there's two righteousnesses at work. There's our righteousness and there's his righteousness. And it was the work of the Messiah to bring Yahweh's righteousness to us. See, we can't be saved, we can't be revived and restored by our own righteousness. It has to be the righteousness of Yahweh that restores us. And that righteousness of Yahweh was placed in the Messiah Yahshua. Even Yahshua said that, hey, there's no one good but Yahweh. So even any goodness he had came from Yahweh, the Father. And so we know that he was righteous. And so through him, when his life is in us, when it's no longer we who live, it's he that lives in us, then we will be made righteous. And we are cleansed through the righteousness of Yahweh. And that's revival. When the righteousness of Yahweh dwells in us, both through the Messiah and through our taking heed according to his word. But first we have to long for his precepts. We have to desire the right way to live. And then he will revive us in his righteousness through Yahshua. Vav, or Waw, is the Hebrew letter. Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Waw. Let your mercies come also to me, O Yahweh, your salvation according to your word. That's how we receive his mercies that we just read. His righteousness. His mercies come. His salvation comes according to his word, through his righteousness that he placed in the Messiah Yahshua. So he is longing for the righteousness of Yahweh, for the mercies, and for his salvation. And that's all through Yahshua, who is our salvation. That's why his name is Yahshua. Yahweh is salvation. So shall I have an answer for him who reproaches me, for I trust in your word. See, when those who reproach us for the things we did wrong, we can say, well, I have the mercies of Yahweh placed in me. He cleansed me. He took away my sin. Yes, I did wrong, but Yahweh forgave me, and he's the one that holds the record books, right? So we'll have an answer. We trust in the word of Yahweh that he says he is merciful toward those whose heart is tender toward him, who fear him and love him and want to serve him in righteousness. And take not the word of truth utterly out of my mouth, for I have hoped in your ordinances. And that's where we talked earlier about how if we don't understand the word, it says the enemy comes and takes the word right out. So we have to seek understanding. So shall I keep your law continually, forever and ever. If what? If Yahweh doesn't take his word away from us, then we'll be able to keep it. And I will walk at liberty, for I seek your precepts. Much talk today about liberty. How we have liberty in Messiah. Liberty doesn't mean we get to do whatever we want, however we want. It means that even though we have done wrong, we are given the liberty to come back to Yahweh and to serve him and to walk in those ways, and be given the grace to learn at a pace that we're able to walk. I will speak of your testimonies also before kings, and will not be ashamed. We cannot be ashamed of the word of Yahweh. The things that we do that are walking according to the word of Yahweh, we cannot be ashamed. We can't be ashamed of the Messiah. There's one place in where Yahshua spoke of this very thing. In Mark 8, verse 38, it says, for whoever is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of him the Son of Man also will be ashamed when he comes in the glory of his Father and the holy angels. So we can't be ashamed of the Messiah, and we can't be ashamed of his words either. We've got to love and desire and walk in the words of Yahweh and not be ashamed. And even if we had to come before a president of the United States or whoever it was, a king somewhere or some kind of world leader, we will not be ashamed. And many of the apostles we know in the book of Revelation did that very thing. They went before kings. Paul, he spoke before Felix, before Agrippa, before Caesar even. So, and I will delight myself in your commandments, which I love. So here's a man who has a love affair with the word of Yahweh. What is it about the word of Yahweh that he just delights himself so much in it? What is it? I'll get to that. My hands also will I lift up to your commandments, which I love, and I will meditate on your statutes. We lift up our hands to the commandments. I have a picture of a little child lifting up his hands to his papa. And it's not a bunch of words on a page that he's in love with. It's the way of Yahweh and the goodness of his love, the goodness of his word. That's what he's longing for. He wants to be just like his heavenly Father. More on that in a minute. The next Hebrew letter is Zayin. Remember the word to your servant upon which you have caused me to hope. So Yahweh is the one that gives us hope through his word. He's the one that causes us to hope in his word. Remember the word to your servant. Sometimes we'll get divine revelation too. Yahweh will just say something to us in our heart, and we'll know that came from Yahweh. And we'll put our hope in that. Some plan, some promise he makes to us. This is my comfort in my affliction, for your word has given me life. Yahshua spoke of this in John chapter 6, verse 63. He said, the words I speak to you, they are spirit and they are life. His word is life-giving. He spoke the entire universe into existence with his word. And with his word, we are given life. It says that he breathed into Adam, and Adam became a living soul. That word breathe is the Hebrew word ruach, from which we get breath, the breath of life. So his word was formed by his breath, and his breath gives us life. Also leads us to life, doesn't it? The proud have me in great derision, yet I do not turn aside from your word. See, those who are proud do not turn aside from your law. Those who are proud, they're going to try to mock you and make fun of you and cause reproach because you are not turning aside from the commandments of Yahweh. You're going to get opposition when you decide that you're committed to keeping the way of Yahweh. You're going to get it. It's just how it goes. Goes with territory. I remembered your judgments of old, O Yahweh, and have comforted myself. So he remembers how Yahweh judged different men in the scriptures and the things that they did wrong. And we can be comforted in that Yahweh's justice is going to come. His righteousness is going to be revealed. We can take comfort in that. So when those are around us or holding us in great derision, causing us to be mocked and scorned, we don't turn aside from his law, but remember his judgments of old and be comforted in that Yahweh will even everything out in the end. We don't have to worry. Indignation has taken hold of me because of the wicked who forsake your law. So he gets upset when he sees people who are around him and they're forsaking the word of Yahweh. They don't want to please the Father. They don't want to walk in his ways. And so, and that needs to be our attitude too. We look around us and we see how this world is and all the ugliness and the way they just turn their heart away from Yahweh and ignore him. It ought to bother us. So we want to do something about it. We want to stand for what's right and teach people what's right. And so we're going to begin to look around us and say, wow, all these people, they're not walking in the way of love. See, every commandment in the Word of Yahweh has one thing in mind. That's to love Yahweh and to love our neighbor. That's what it's all about. That's the purpose of it. That's the purpose of every command in the Scriptures. To teach us how to love Yahweh and how to love one another. And when we learn that, we realize that. I mean, when we read the Scriptures, we don't need to be looking at them and saying, wow, look at all the different things I can show how my friend over here is doing wrong things. We should look at them and say, wow, am I really walking this out the way I should? Let's meditate on this a while. Wow, this is the way of love. This is the way of right. It's the way of truth. How can I walk in this? But then once we begin to see this, then we look around us, it begin to really bother us, the things that are going around the world today, and how Yahweh he's just ignored. And his word is ignored. And we want to go and do something about it in love. And we'll be proclaiming the word of Yahweh to all who are willing to listen. Your statutes have been my songs in the house of my pilgrimage. See, we're pilgrims here, brothers. This is our temporary home. This is not a permanent home that we're in. And so this is wherever we live, it's our house of our pilgrimage. It's a temporary place. And his commands, his words, will be our songs. And there are many songs out there, recorded songs in the world today. But we want to let his word be our songs, don't we? When we start singing his words, something happens in the spiritual realm. Something awesome just happens. It says he inhabits our praises. It shows that we really delight in him and his ways and his word. That's a good thing. I remember your name in the night, O Yahweh, and I keep your law. Some of us look at us and say, oh, well, you talk about his name and his law all the time. Yes, sometimes we do talk about his name, and we also talk about his law. That's not a bad thing to remember his name, is it? And what is his name? Is it the Lord? No. His name is Yahweh. So we remember his name. And we also want to keep and put value in and seek to walk in his law as well. Because his law is the way of love. It teaches us how to love. And that's a good thing. This has become mine because I kept your precepts. What became mine? His Torah. His law became, Yahweh's law became his law. That's the way we need to look at it. This is not just Yahweh's law. This is my law. When we look at the words of Yahweh, that's our law. That's our law because it's the law that we're going by. It's a law that we're living by. And so it's a law we've made for ourselves that came from the word of Yahweh. As we keep his precepts, then Yahweh's law will become our law. Chet is the next Hebrew letter. You are my portion, O Yahweh. I have said that I would keep your words. Yahweh is our portion. He's our inheritance. He's the one we're putting our hope in. Not the portion and the inheritance of men, but the portion and inheritance of Yahweh. I entreated your favor with my whole heart. He's looking for grace, looking for favor with his whole heart. Be merciful to me according to your word. See, as much as Yahweh's law, and much as his word talks about how he will judge the wicked, he will also, there's also a lot of scripture about him loving mercy too, and long-suffering. And so there's more to it than just be obedient. There's also his mercy. And so his mercy, he's saying, be merciful to me according to his word. He says he will be merciful toward those whose heart is turned toward righteousness and want to live right. He will give mercy. And of course, we know now those who believe in the Messiah, Yahshua. I thought about my ways and turned my feet to your testimonies. We got to think about what we're doing. When we look at the word of Yahweh, we got to think, okay, are our feet turned in that way? That's what we got to think about. That's the question. I made haste and did not delay to keep your commandments. I like that verse right there. I think a lot of times people will they'll look at the scriptures and they'll say, I'll get around to it. Yeah, I'll get around to it. But here's a man who, he heard the commandment. He didn't waste any time. He did it right away. And that's the way Abraham was. It says he rose early the next morning, took his son, went up on the hill, and was ready to offer him right there on the altar. He made haste, did not delay. And that needs to be our attitude as well. We hear it, don't waste time. Let's go do it. Yahweh said it, we do it, that settles it. The cords of the wicked have bound me, but I have not forgotten your law. And that's what the wicked would have us do. They want to put a muzzle in our mouth. They don't want us to talk about righteousness. And one day, they may very well seek to bind us. At midnight I will rise to give thanks to you because of your righteous judgments. You imagine that? He's laying there in bed and he just all of a sudden thinks, boy, I sure am thankful to Yahweh for his commandments. I think I'm going to get up and just give thanks to him. You talk about it. What is it? What is this man? What has happened to him? What has gotten into him? It's not what has gotten into him. It's who has gotten into him. He has a love affair with the word of Yahweh. But what is it? I'm going to get to that. I'm a companion of all those who fear you and of those who keep your precepts. So we got to watch out. We got to watch out for who our friends are, don't we? Who are our friends? Those that fear Elohim or those who do not fear Elohim? It says that he who walks with the wise men will be wise in one proverb, but a companion of fools will be destroyed. And so who are our friends? Who are the ones that we hang out with? Fools or those who fear him? Sometimes it's hard to find those that fear Yahweh, but they're out there. Proverbs 13:20 says that he who walks with the wise men will be wise. The companion of fools will be destroyed. And so who are our companions? Sometimes our friends will lead us astray. So we need to make sure that the people that we hang out with, the people we are with, are the righteous and not the unrighteous. The earth, O Yahweh, is full of your mercy. Teach me your statutes. See, at any moment, Yahweh could just, totally, utterly destroy us and destroy everything here. But by his mercies, we are not consumed. And so the whole earth is full of his mercy. Now we're into the next Hebrew letter, Tet. You have dealt well with your servant, O Yahweh, according to your word. Can we say that? Even though we have not gotten what we deserved. We deserve nothing but the lake of fire, right? We've not gotten what we deserve. He has dealt us blessings, even though we have not been totally faithful in our lives. And he's declaring that Yahweh has dealt well with him according to his word. He says he will bless us when we turn to righteousness. Teach me good judgment and knowledge, for I believe your commandments. If you want to know someone who has good judgment in an issue, it's going to be someone who meditates on the word of Yahweh. Before I was afflicted, I went astray, but now I keep your word. Sometimes we need a little bit of affliction in our life, don't we? And we tend to go astray. We need a little bit of affliction to get us to see that when we turn away from the words of Yahweh, we're going to get affliction in our life. We're going to get things that happen to us that are just gut-wrenching and do not bring peace. You are good and do good. Teach me your statutes. So Yahweh is good and does good things. Man claims to be good, but then doesn't do good things. You ever notice that when someone dies at a funeral, they always say, he was a good man, no matter how bad he was? But Yahweh is good and does good. In other words, what we say about him matches what he does. The proud have forged a lie against me, but I will keep your precepts with my whole heart. That's one of the most powerful weapons that those who do not love Yahweh will do. They'll try to lie about you and say that you've done some kind of wrong thing, some kind of thing, and they'll try to slander you. Because the devil is an accuser. The word devil means accuse. Their heart is as fat as grease, but I delight in your law. See, they may have everything. Their heart may have all their heart's desire, their riches, and all the things of this age. And so their heart is fat as grease. But it says, Yahweh, he says, I delight in your law. So they're delighting in the things that are temporary. And all that grease in their hearts is going to turn to clog up their arteries. But I think he's speaking spiritually here, but it's kind of physical as well. But I delight in your law. Then he says, and I like this, it is good for me that I have been afflicted, that I may learn your statutes. And that's the right attitude, brothers. If we've been afflicted in some way in our life, if some kind of bad thing has happened to us, we can say, it's a good thing. Because this is going to cause me to learn more about how I need to be living. I'm going to learn something from this, because all things do work out for the good of those that love Yahweh. And we're going to take this attitude that says, our affliction, our light affliction that we have in this age, it's a good thing. It's going to refine us. It's going to keep us pure. It's going to cause us to focus on the spiritual things. That's all for our good. It's something to rejoice about. Now, it's not so easy to do that in the midst of it, is it? But that's what Yahweh would have us do. That's the right thing to do. And I just love the attitude of this fellow, whoever wrote this, wherever he was. I love to meet him one day, because it's an attitude I would like to have, always, continually. The law of your mouth is better to me than thousands of coins of gold and silver. Is that our attitude? Do we value his word more than we do the things of this age? And that is the bottom line. Brothers, that's where it's at. What do we place value in? The things of Yahweh or the things of this world? Because they're contrary to one another. And it says that we're adulterers and adulteresses if we have friendship with the world. Because all that's in the world, the lust of the eyes, the pride of life, is not of the Father, but is of the world. That's the book of James. And so we value his word more than we do anything else in this world. Yod is the next Hebrew letter. Your hands have made me and fashioned me. Give me understanding that I may learn your commandments. Yahweh, the one who created us, is quite able of giving us understanding. We declare that he is our creator, in spite of what evolutionists may say. Yahweh is our creator. See, once you take out Yahweh, then you get to form your own commandments, your own statutes, your own judgments, and be your own Elohim and make your own laws and do whatever you want. That's what happens. But when we recognize we are created beings, and we need to walk according to the ways of our Creator, the way to do the things He created us to do, then we're going to want to know, what is your command? What do you desire of me? Yeah, 1 John was, do not love the world nor the things that's in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. Also, James says, adulterers and adulteresses. Those who fear you will be glad when they see me, because I have hoped in your word. So those that fear Yahweh will rejoice when someone else that fears Yahweh comes in their midst. But those who don't fear Yahweh and are doing the wrong things, they don't want the light to come around them. So they'll flee, because their darkness will be exposed. That's another verse in Scripture. It says that the darkness does not want to be around the light, lest its evil deeds be exposed. Okay, I'll look it up for you. In John chapter 3, verse 20, Yeshua said, for everyone practicing evil hates the light, does not come to the light, lest his deeds be exposed. But he who does the truth comes to the light, that his deeds may be clearly seen, that they have been done in Elohim. It's John chapter 3, verses 20 and 21. So we who fear Yahweh will be glad when someone else that fears Yahweh comes and we see them. And that's just the way things are. But if we're those who don't want the light, they kind of give us the cold shoulder and don't want to be around us. I know, O Yahweh, that your judgments are right, and that in faithfulness you have afflicted me. He's, again, taking that attitude about affliction. It's in His faithfulness that we're being afflicted. It's for our good. His judgments are right. The things He judged us about, they're all right. They're good. It's all in faithfulness, so that we may be more like the Messiah. So He doesn't mind affliction, because He knows it's all for His good. Let, I pray, your merciful kindness be for my comfort, according to your word to your servant. And so we want Yahweh's merciful kindness upon us. That gives us comfort, doesn't it? That even though we have failed Him, His mercy and His kindness is our comforter. That He is faithful and He is just to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. 1 John chapter 1, verse 9. Let your tender mercies come to me, that I may live, for your law is my delight. See, this psalmist, even though he says, oh, I've kept your word, I will direct my heart, he's saying, he's recognizing he's not a perfect man. And yet at the same time, he recognizes himself as being one that keeps the word of Yahweh. And it's okay for us to say that we keep the word of Yahweh, because in Yahweh's tender mercies, He's given us life. We have to delight in His law. We have to delight in His word, but He will give us life. We'll delight because we repented. We turned away from the wrong things. We want to know what is the right way to live. What is the way of love? Where am I failing you, Yahweh? Help me to live according to your word. Let the proud be ashamed, for they treated me wrongfully with falsehood. But I will meditate on your precepts. So those who are proud are going to they don't like to be shamed, and they don't like the light exposing their darkness, and so they're going to try to mistreat us because they don't want to be around the light. They don't want their deeds to be exposed, and so they're going to try to shame us in some way and falsely accuse us. Let those who fear you turn to me, those who know your testimonies. So again, those who love Yahweh are going to want to be around Him. Those who don't love Yahweh, the proud, they're not going to want to be around Him. Or if they are around Him, they're going to try to accuse Him of something. Let my heart be blameless regarding your statutes, that I may not be ashamed. Once again, he's desiring to not be ashamed because he knows his heart is not quite blameless. There's some things in his heart that needs to be confessed, some things that need to be resolved in his heart. Next Hebrew letter, Kaf. My soul faints for your salvation, but I hope in your word. So that once again, that longing for Yahweh's salvation. And we know who that comes from, don't we? Yahshua, our master. My eyes fail from searching your words, saying, when will you comfort me? So he has a moment where he's lacking peace. And he's looking searching for something in his word that would give him some comfort in his afflictions. For I have become like a wineskin in smoke. Yet I do not forget your statutes. If you were to take a wineskin and hang it over a fire, it would be all dried up. It'd be just a little husk is all that's left. And so, you ever felt like that? Kind of dried out and useless? And yet you're holding on to Yahweh with all you got. That's the way the fellow who wrote this, that's the way he felt sometimes. It's common to men. How many are the days of your servant? When will you execute judgment on those who persecute me? That's something we're all longing for, is Yahweh's judgment to come on the earth and straighten this mess out, aren't we? So we long to know, when will it be? The proud have dug pits for me, which is not according to your law. Once again, there's always opposition when you try to do the word of Yahweh. All your commandments are faithful. They persecute me wrongfully. Help me. How many times you read in the Psalms where the enemies are always attacking? They almost made an end of me on earth, but I did not forsake your precepts. So they almost killed him, almost put an end to him on this earth. But he held on to Yahweh, would not compromise, and Yahweh saw him through. That's what we need to do. Revive me according to your loving kindness, so that I may keep the testimony of your mouth. We need that revival according to Yahweh's loving kindness. See, if there's no hope, then just eat, drink, and be merry, right? But if there's hope, if the loving kindness of Yahweh appears, then we'll see it's worth it to keep his testimonies. Forever, O Yahweh, your word is settled in heaven. Forever. It's settled. It's done. The law of Yahweh abides forever. Not one jot, not one tittle will be taken away from the law until everything is fulfilled. Everything is accomplished. And Yahshua has much more to accomplish, doesn't he? Your faithfulness endures to all generations. You establish the earth, and it abides. So his word and his faithfulness both are forever. And that lamed there is the Hebrew word. I'm sure that the word in Hebrew there is probably le'olam, which means forever. So he talks about the endurance of Yahweh's word and his faithfulness and his mercy. They continue this day according to your ordinances, for all are your servants. What does? The ends of the earth that abide in his faithfulness and his word continues to this day. Has not been abolished. Unless your law had been my delight, I would have perished in my affliction. We got to keep that law of Yahweh as being our delight and not compromise, or we may end up perishing. I will never forget your precepts, for by them you have given me life. That's that life-giving spirit in the word of Yahweh. Once again, I am yours. Save me, for I have sought your precepts. The wicked wait for me to destroy me, but I will consider your testimonies. I have seen the consummation of all perfection, but your commandment is exceedingly broad. That's a kind of an interesting verse there. Consummation of all perfection. And if you look in the Hebrew, it has to do with the things of this world, accomplishments of men in this world. He's seen it all, but the commandment of Yahweh is deeper and wider and broader and applies in so many different ways. And the word of Yahweh is so awesome and so deep and so high, and it applies in so many different ways in our life. It's broader than and wider and bigger than anything he's ever seen. That's what I'm getting, looking at the Hebrew there. And then we have Mem. Oh, how I love your law. It is my meditation all the day. So even if he's not reading it, he's thinking about it. Hallelujah. You, through your commandments, make me wiser than my enemies, for they are ever with me. See, Yahweh's word is our wisdom. There's a place in the Torah it says that this is your wisdom. This is your understanding. This, the words of Yahweh, this law right here, he says, this is your wisdom. In Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 6, be careful to observe them, for this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the peoples who hear all these statutes and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. And so Yahweh's commandments make us wiser than those who are around us. And we'll walk in wisdom, and they'll marvel at it. They may not say it, but they'll think it. I have more understanding than all my teachers, for your testimonies are my meditation. So even those who are considered to be teachers of the word, then we're going to be wiser than them. If we're constantly, all the day, it says, the word of Yahweh is his meditation. When he rise up, when he lie down, when he walk by the way, when he sits in his house, just like Yahweh commanded in Deuteronomy chapter 6. This word which I command you shall be in your heart, and you shall teach them diligently to your children when you rise up, when you lie down, and so on. I understand more than the ancients because I keep your precepts. See, it's one thing to actually hear about them. It's another thing to actually keep them. And as we keep them, we're going to be given more understanding. We're going to be given more wisdom. We're going to know experientially the blessing of keeping his word. I have restrained my feet from every evil way that I may keep your word. So when you see something evil ahead of you, you got to turn away from it. You see temptation ahead of you, you got to turn away from it. I have not departed from your judgments, for you yourself have taught me. Yahweh is our instructor. You know, with one thing, when somebody else teaches you something, you go, okay, yeah, I get it. But when he teaches you, it's there. When he personally, with his spirit, instructs you through some revelation, through something that he just shows you in his word, something you rejoice in, it's there. It's there forever. It's in your heart. So we got to keep in mind, even as we teach the word of Yahweh, that Yahweh himself, when he reveals something to somebody, it's far better than we just telling them. Yahweh is our teacher. How sweet are your words to my taste, sweeter than honey to my mouth. And that, when we read his word, that needs to be our attitude. Wow, this is just awesome. Very interesting just how much this man is in love with the word of Yahweh. What is it about the word of Yahweh? He just loves it more than gold, more than anything he tastes with his mouth. What is it? Through your precepts I get understanding. Therefore I hate every false way. When we look at something in the world today and it's something that's not of Yahweh, we're gonna hate it. We're going to hate whatever that thing is. Because the more we fill our minds with truth and love and truth and wisdom, the more we're going to hate the foolishness and the lies and the things of this age. And we're not going to even like it. You know, someone might delight in a television program, and we're not going to have any delight in it because of the ugliness that's there. And because we hate it. We hate all that sin that they're glorifying. Noon, the next Hebrew letter. Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. Much is made of that, but what is his word? It's his law, the law of Yahweh, found in Genesis to Deuteronomy, as well as the rest of the word too. But we don't exclude anything. I have sworn and confirmed that I will keep your righteous judgments. Whew. That's a pretty heavy thing. To swear to keep his judgments and confirm it. To take an oath. I am afflicted very much. Revive me, O Yahweh, according to your word. Once again, the affliction. Accept, I pray, the freewill offerings of my mouth, O Yahweh, and teach me your judgments. See, when we make a praise offering to Yahweh, it's a freewill offering. And when we praise Yahweh, that's a freewill offering of our mouth. We take a moment and break out in song and sing his statutes and praise him. That's a freewill offering to Yahweh. A sacrifice. My life is continually in my hand, yet I do not forget your law. So he values his life, but he doesn't forget the law of Yahweh. So we value our life, but we put the word of Yahweh first. And since we do value our life, we will put the word of Yahweh first. I'm talking about the life in this age. It says, he who seeks to save his life will lose it. He who loses it for my sake will find it. That's what Yahshua said. The wicked have laid a snare for me, yet I have not strayed from your precepts. And that's what happens. They're always setting them snares out there. But Yahweh, by his word, will reveal to us, by his Spirit, where they're laying out their snare. Will be given discernment. Your testimonies I have taken as a heritage forever, for they are the rejoicing of my heart. So we're considering that Yahweh's word is our inheritance. And his promises, all the things he tells us that he will give us if we are faithful. And we rejoice in them. We leap for joy. Even in persecution. I have inclined my heart to perform your statutes forever to the very end, because he who endures to the end will be saved, right? That's what we're looking for. It's not, we got to finish well. So, in whatever state you're in now, if you're doing well, praise Yahweh, but remember, we got to finish well. I hate the double-minded, but I love your law. The Hebrew letter samech. We don't like the double-minded because they're unstable in all their ways, right? You are my hiding place and my shield. I hope in your word. So Yahweh is the one who hides us and protects us. He's our shield, and we can believe it. Depart from me, you evildoers, for I will keep the commandments of my Elohim. I think Yahshua quoted this scripture one time. Matthew chapter 7. He says, I never knew you. Depart from me, you that work iniquity. Uphold me according to your word, that I may live, and do not let me be ashamed of my hope. Once again, asking for Yahweh's mercy to uphold him. Hold me up, and I shall be safe, and I shall observe your statutes continually. Yahweh is the one who holds us up. You reject all those who stray from your statutes, for their deceit is falsehood. That's going to go hand in hand. When someone strays from the words of Yahweh, they're going to start walking in deceit and falsehood. You put away all the wicked of the earth like dross. Therefore I love your testimonies. Yahweh is purifying the earth, heating up the earth, and getting rid of the wicked who are like dross. That's what happens when a silversmith, heats up the silver to get rid of the dross. One day the fire of Yahweh will do away with all the wicked. My flesh trembles for fear of you, and I am afraid of your judgments. There's a true fear of Elohim, and that's not a bad thing. And this is literally fear and trembling of Yahweh. Do we have that? Or are we lacking that? Do we take advantage of his grace sometimes? Oh, he'll forgive us and go ahead and do what we're not supposed to do. Or do we have a true fear of Elohim? Ayin is the next Hebrew letter. I have done justice and righteousness. Do not leave me to my oppressors. He's saying, Yahweh, I've done these things. I've served you. I've been faithful. Don't leave me to my oppressors. Deliver me from my enemies. Be surety for your servant for good. Do not let the proud oppose me. Very interesting scripture here in verse 123. That Yahweh is our surety. Because in the scriptures it says that Yahshua is a surety for a better covenant. Do not let the proud oppress me. My eyes fail from seeking your salvation in your righteous word. So he's so busy seeking the word of Yahweh, his eyes are failing. Amazing. Deal with your servant according to your mercy and teach me your statutes. I am your servant. Give me understanding that I may know your testimonies. It is time for you to act, O Yahweh, for they have regarded your law as void. Have they ever? There's a scripture that says that in Romans, it says that faith does not cause his law to be void. And that's in Romans chapter 3, verse 31, says, do we make void the law through faith? Certainly not. On the contrary, we establish the law. If you look up the word void in a Strong's Concordance, it has to do with rendering, to be abolishing, to do away with. And that's what people claim today. The law of Yahweh is done away with. But he says no. In fact, it's established. In other words, it's caused to stand. The law of Yahweh is caused to stand. It's still there for us to look to and to walk in. Therefore I love your commandments more than gold. Much more than fine gold. Therefore all your precepts concerning all things I consider to be right. I hate every false way. So even if something may seem amiss to us, that we don't understand, it doesn't seem right to us, we got to consider his precepts to be right. Doesn't matter what we think. We have little tiny puny minds here on the earth, and the ways of Yahweh are right. Even if we don't understand them fully, we must consider them to be right. Next Hebrew letter is Pei. Your testimonies are wonderful, therefore my soul keeps them. The entrance of your words gives light. It gives understanding to the simple. I opened my mouth and panted, for I longed for your commandments. Isn't this amazing? All the different ways he's expressing his love for Yahweh's word. What is it about the word of Yahweh? Look upon me and be merciful to me, as your custom is toward those who what? Love your name. To those who love your name. Hallelujah. And he will. He will be merciful toward those who love his name. Direct my steps by your word, and let no iniquity have dominion over me. And Yahweh has delivered us from the dominion of iniquity. We do not believe that iniquity has any power over us, because through Yahshua, the Messiah, we are given freedom. And we are not in bondage to sin any longer. Redeem me from the oppression of man, that I may keep your precepts. Once again, man's oppression versus Yahweh's freedom. Make your face shine upon your servant, and teach me your statutes. When his face shines upon us, that means he's looking upon us and glowing with joy. That's what we long to see, is the joy of Yahweh upon us. Rivers of water run down from my eyes, because men do not keep your law. Is that our attitude today, brothers? And there's lots of men out there who refuse to keep Yahweh's law. Does that bother us to the point of tears? That's where it needs to be. Tzaddik, and that's the next Hebrew letter. And actually, tzaddik means righteous in Hebrew. Righteous are you. That's why the first word is righteous. Righteous are you, O Yahweh, and upright are your judgments. Your testimonies which you have commanded are righteous and very faithful. My zeal has consumed me, because my enemies have forgotten your words. You ever felt like that? People around you forget the word of Yahweh, and you're zealous for Yahweh's word, and pretty soon you get wore out trying to persuade people the ways of Yahweh are right. because the rivers of water are running down from your eyes over the fact that others are not keeping the word of Yahweh. Your word is very pure. Therefore your servant loves it. That's why he loves it. The word of Yahweh is pure. That's one reason. Refined like fire 7 times, right? I am small and despised, yet I do not forget your precepts. Doesn't view himself as being significant. Considers himself to be small. He's hated, but yet he will not forget Yahweh and his commandments. That's where we need to be. Your righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and your law is truth. It's his righteousness that cleanses us from all sin. Therefore, we will be righteous forever, because his righteousness dwells in us through Yeshua the Messiah. Trouble and anguish have overtaken me, yet your commandments are my delights. The righteousness of your testimonies is everlasting. Give me understanding, and I shall live. So the law of Yahweh lives and endures forever, doesn't it? Seeking that understanding. Kof is the next Hebrew letter. I will cry out with my whole heart. Hear me, O Yahweh. I will keep your statutes. That's what Yahweh is looking for, that cry with the whole heart. There's something about crying out to Yahweh. There's several places in Scripture where men of Yahweh cried out and Yahweh worked an immediate miracle. There's something about that. When we cry out with the whole heart, Yahweh hears us. I cry out to you, save me, and I will keep your testimonies. Very interesting word there, to cry out. It's kind of related to, I'll get to that some other day. I rise before the dawning of the morning and cry for help. I hope in your word. So he is diligently crying out to Yahweh for his. That takes faith to do that. Sometimes someone might say, I'll pray about it. But when you really want something, you're going to cry out. You're going to cry out to Yahweh. My eyes are awake through the night watches, that I may meditate on your word. So he's up, his meditation all the day, and then he's up late at night, studying the word of Yahweh. Talk about a man who is zealous and on fire and loves the word of Yahweh. Hear my voice according to your loving kindness, O Yahweh. Revive me according to your justice. They draw near who follow after wickedness. They are far from your law. The only reason they won't draw near is if they can do something to hurt him, right? You are near, O Yahweh, and all your commandments are truth. So even though they may draw near, Yahweh also is near. And that's what we need to keep in mind, brothers, is even though the enemy may come after us, the creator of the universe is with us. The one who holds their breath in his hands is with us. And he can withhold that breath any day. Concerning your testimonies, I have known of old that you have founded them forever. Do we believe that? His law endures forever. His testimonies are forever. They will never perish. They'll never go away. Next Hebrew letter is Resh. Consider my affliction and deliver me, for I do not forget your law. Plead my cause and redeem me. Revive me according to your word. Salvation is far from the wicked, for they do not seek your statutes. See, we got to seek his statutes. We got to seek his law. We got to seek righteousness. In order for us to find salvation, we have to repent. It means turn away from wrong and turn toward righteousness. We may not be perfected that moment. We may make mistakes. We may fail from time to time. But that's not our heart. That's not where we want to be. We want to be seeking and walking in the word of Yahweh. Great are your tender mercies, O Yahweh. Sometimes we declare that, his long-suffering, his tender mercies, and we put our trust in that. Revive me according to your judgments. Many are my persecutors and my enemies, yet I do not turn from your testimonies. I see the treacherous and am disgusted, because they do not keep your word. Do we see that? We see something on the internet or something on the TV or hear some kind of story about something, we're disgusted. We don't want to hear that stuff. It's disgusting because they don't keep the word of Yahweh. Consider how I love your precepts. Revive me, O Yahweh, according to your loving kindness. The entirety of your word is truth. Every one of your righteous judgments endures forever. And so, from Genesis to Revelation, everything there is true and is righteous and endures forever. Hallelujah. Princes persecute me without a cause, but my heart stands in awe of your word. That love for the word, what is it about that? I rejoice at your word as one who finds great treasure. Same way someone who finds great treasure and he jumps up and down and he's excited because he found it, so he does with the word of Yahweh. You ever heard, has that ever happened to you sometime? You're just looking through the word, you find something, you're like, wow, look at that. That is awesome. And rejoice like one who just found a great treasure. I hate and abhor lying, but I love your law. We have to hate lies. We have to love truth. 7 times a day I praise you because of your righteous judgments. 7 times a day. Great peace have those who love your law, and nothing causes them to stumble. That's an awesome scripture there, if you really think about that for a while. Those who love the law of Yahweh are going to have the peace that they desire, and nothing will cause them to stumble. And the more love we have for Yahweh's word, the less stumbling we're going to have in our life, and the less we're going to fail, and the less we're going to sin, and the more peace we're going to have as a result. Yahweh, I hope for your salvation, and I do your commandments. My soul keeps your testimonies, and I love them exceedingly. I keep your precepts and your testimonies, for all my ways are before you. And then the final Hebrew letter, Tav, Aleph and the Tav. Yahshua, it says, is the Aleph and the Tav, doesn't it? Or the Alpha and the Omega in the Greek. The first letter and last letter in Greek are Alpha and Omega. The first and last letters in the Hebrew alphabet are Aleph and Tav. Let my cry come before you, O Yahweh. Give me understanding according to your word. That crying out, once again, is more than just a prayer. It's a crying out. That's what it is. So if we're crying out to Yahweh, there's something special about that. Let my supplication come before you. Deliver me according to your word. My lips shall utter praise, for you teach me your statutes. See, once Yahweh has taught you the things he's taught you, it's time to give thanks, to give praise. Because that's a gift from Elohim. That's a gift from him. That's a blessing to you. When he teaches you something in his word, just praise him. Thank you, Father. Because not everyone gets to learn the things that you're learning. My tongue shall speak of your word, for all your commandments are righteousness. So we open our mouths and we share the things that we've learned. Let your hand become my help, for I have chosen your precepts. We got to hold on to that hand that never changes. I long for your salvation, O Yahweh, and your law is my delight. That's it right there, brothers. We need to long for his salvation through Yahshua the Messiah, and we have to delight in his word. Revelation 14 verse 12 says, here's the patience of the saints. Here are those that have the testimony of Yahshua and keep the commandments of Yahweh. And that's what we're reading right here. That's salvation through the Messiah and that delight in His Word that causes us to keep His Word. Let my soul live, and it shall praise you. And let your judgments help me. See, as we long for that salvation, His law is our delight. He will allow our soul to live, and we will praise Him forever and ever. And His judgments will be our help and not our demise. See, Yahweh, when Yahweh judges, He doesn't always judge that we've been wrong and we need to be destroyed. Sometimes He judges that we are righteous and that we need to live. And it's through the Messiah Yahshua that His judgments will be our help and not our demise. And the final verse of Psalm 119, he confesses, I have gone astray like a lost sheep. Seek your servant, for I do not forget your commandments. How many of us can say that? We've gone astray like a lost sheep. And yet, Yahweh sought us. He sought us out like the shepherd. There was the 99 that were left, and He sought that one sheep that gone astray. And through the Messiah Yahshua, He brought us back into His sheepfold. It's a beautiful thing. And it says, because I don't forget your commandments, seek me out. And Yahshua the Good Shepherd will do that. He will seek you out if you delight in His Word. So, brothers, what is it? What is it about the Word of Yahweh that this psalmist just had a love affair? Just absolutely adored. What is it? You know what I think it is? You see, Yahshua is called the Word of Elohim, isn't He? That was made flesh and dwelt among us, a place in the book of Revelation. It says that Yahshua is called the Word of Elohim. That was one of His names, the Word of Elohim. You see, Yahshua kept every one of these statutes perfectly, without fail. Every one of these commandments He kept. And so when you read thou shalt, you will know Yahshua kept them. And so what is it about these statutes, these judgments, these commandments, these laws that caused this man to love them so much? It's because he saw Yahshua there. I believe that with all my heart. That's why. Because he saw Yahshua. He saw a picture of a man, a perfect man. And he wanted to be just like that man because he loved that man, that picture that was painted. He loved it. Are we getting this? That when we read the words of Yahweh and we see the commandments that are there, and it says thou shalt this or thou shalt not do that, we need to see Yahshua in that, the Savior, the Messiah, the one who did never sin one time. Not one time did He ever transgress Yahweh's word. And so we see this picture that is painted of a perfect man who has kept all these commandments. And we're going to love that man. You see, if we don't love the Word, then we can't say we really love Yahshua because He is the Word. If we don't love the law of Yahweh, then there's something about the Messiah that we're not loving. Because He is the living Word of Yahweh that was made flesh and dwelt among us. And so this love affair with the Word of Yahweh is the same as a love affair with the Messiah Himself. Because if he who dwells in us, there's going to be his spirit that dwells in us. Ezekiel 37:26, that will just cause us to walk in his statutes, his judgments, and to do them. And that's a good thing. The Spirit of Yahweh leads us to obedience to those laws. Now, those laws are not our salvation. It's the Savior himself who is our salvation. We cannot claim to be saved by our observance of the commandments. But because we love the Messiah, because we just want him to dwell in us fully and just do the things he did on the earth in us, we love his word. We're going to love the law of Yahweh, and it's going to be our delight. We're going to value it more than gold. We're going to consider it more precious than silver, and more than any necessary food. It will become our food. And that's the kind of love that Yahweh is desiring from each of us, is that we would have that love for the Messiah. And to me, that's the number one test of what a believer is. Not how many commandments they kept yesterday, but whether they truly have a love for the word of Yahweh. Because if we don't have a love for the word of Yahweh, then how can we say we love the Messiah? And so when we read the word of Yahweh, we delight in it. And we want that to be our reality. We want to be what that says for us to be. And so, brothers, let's keep that in mind as we read these scriptures, that they are painting this picture of the Messiah himself. And you can see in this Psalm 119, whoever it was, he was certainly a man after Yahweh's own heart, wasn't he? It may have been David. It may very well have been David. But he was a man after Yahweh's own heart, whoever that was. And if we want to be men and women after Yahweh's own heart, then look closely at Psalm 119, and you're going to get a really, really good picture of a man who is dedicated and in love with Yahweh and his word. And so as you meditate on these words and put them into practice, may Yahweh bless you, and may Yahweh have mercy upon us all.